You know what makes League of Legends esports so special? It's not when the favourites win, it's when they don't. Some of the most iconic moments in competitive league history aren't the dominant 3-0 sweeps or the clean Baron takes, they're the upsets. The moments when everything we thought we knew got thrown out of the window, when the unbeatable got beaten and the impossible became a reality. There's something strangely electric about watching a Titan fall. Maybe it's the underdog story, the wild card team that refuses to roll over, the third seed that wasn't supposed to be there, or some unknown player picking off a huge name. There is a certain realization that at some point no lead is safe, no favourite is untouchable, and that anything on any given day can happen on the Rift. Today I'm going to go over 10 of the best teams that suffered the most crushing and embarrassing defeats in League of Legends history. These will be tournament favourites that lost out to wildcards, dominant regional champions that couldn't win a single game, and world champions suffering the fastest defeat ever. Sometimes when the pressure's on, things just fall apart, and that can affect anyone. And these weren't just losses, they were statement games, the kind of defeats that shook an entire region, spawned legendary memes, and proved that sometimes the higher you're ranked, the further you fall. These are 10 of the most embarrassing pro moments in League of Legends history. Let's start all the way back in 2013, when Korea was just beginning to establish its dominance over the League of Legends esports. Samsung Galaxy Ozone entered Season 3 World Championship as one of the tournament favourites. Korea's second seed only behind SK Telecom T1. Their star mid laner Dade had just won the OGN Championship Spring 2013 MVP, and was widely regarded as the second best mid laner in the world, only behind this new upcoming player called Faker. On paper, Ozone was stacked. They had future world champions Imp and Mata on their roster. Analysts predicted they would easily reach the finals. Their group contained Fnatic, Gambit, Mineski, and Vulcan. It was expected to be an easy advance through the tournament for the Korean second seed. However, Ozone collapsed spectacularly. They finished the group stage 5-4 and lost a crucial tiebreaker to Gambit Gaming, failing to advance to the bracket stage. Dade, their supposed MVP and star player, was just completely outclassed. He struggled heavily to adapt to the tournament meta. Champions such as Twisted Fate, Ezreal, Jace, and Karthus that he'd been dominating with all year had been nerfed right before the tournament, and his Zed just became an insta-ban against him. In all 4 losses, Dade lagged behind his opponents and was a far cry from being a dominant player. And behind the scenes, Ozone did have everything going against them too. Just weeks before Worlds, their organization moved from MVP to Samsung and replaced their top laner Hon with Rocky Looper. The team had minimal time to build synergy that this kind of tournament would require. On top of that came the meta shift, which gutted Dade's champion pool. And if you add in the fact that they were just expected to advance easily, this is the perfect recipe for disaster. The Korean squad's hubris backfired spectacularly. What should have been a dominant run was one of the first times ever a highly favoured Korean team just bombed at Worlds. Dade's performance was so infamous that the community created the Dade Award, given annually to a star player who flops hardest at Worlds despite massive pre-tournament hype. This moment taught the league community a valuable lesson. Even the best team on paper can faceplant without respect for their opponents. Samsung Ozone learned this the hard way, and their embarrassment became a cautionary tale that echoes throughout the years. Next up, we have G2's infamous vacation at MSI 2016. After absolutely dominating the 2016 EU LCS Spring Split, winning the regular season, earning MVP honours for multiple players, and crushing Origin 3-1 in the finals, G2 Esports rolled into the mid-season invitational as Europe's great hope. Their roster featured Perks, Trick, and new bot lane additions Emperor and Hybrid. They were confident, cocky, and even Europe expected them to put up a fight against the world's best. So along came MSI during this year, and G2 finished the stage with a dreadful 2-8 record, failing to reach the knockout stage. Their only wins came against the international wildcard team Supermassive. They were just thoroughly embarrassed by SKT, Flash Wolves, CLG, and RNG. It wasn't just that they lost, it was how they lost. G2 looked completely unprepared, making basic mistakes and getting run over in nearly every single game. And shortly after these performances started to stack up, the truth came out from G2 members. Instead of boot camping in Korea or China, as other teams during this tournament had done, G2 had taken a vacation. Following a grueling spring split, practicing 10 hours a day, 6 days a week for 3 months straight, the organization decided to give players a much-needed break to visit their families and reset before MSI. Perkz confirmed the lack of preparation with a now infamous tweet after their day 1 losses, saying, "Sorry GG Flash Wolves, no practice really shows off, we'll pick it up for the rest of the tournament." They did not, in fact, pick it up. G2 released an official statement trying to explain their decision, noting that there weren't any EU LCS level scrim partners available in Europe, so taking the time off seemed reasonable. But the community wasn't buying it. Why didn't they go to Korea for boot camping? Why not just scrim challenger teams? Surely something is better than nothing, right? The excuses from G2 rang hollow, and the perception was very much that they just weren't taking this tournament seriously. The term G28 became shorthand for international embarrassment. Fans from other regions will be thanking G2 for their wins and glad to see what should have been hard games just be easy for them. Former Gambit Gaming player Edward even flamed G2 on Twitter, saying he'd rather see any other top 4 EU team represent their region. Both fellow players and fans were just so disappointed to see their top seed not having taken MSI seriously and crashing out in such a fashion. Perhaps worst of all, on top of this, G2's poor showing cost Europe their top seed for Worlds 2016. Because MSI's performance affects regional seeding, G2's failure meant that EU's number 1 seed would be placed in a harder group. So not only did G2 embarrass themselves, they handicapped their entire region for the year's biggest tournament. G2 of course would go on to redeem themselves though, thankfully, reaching MSI finals in 2017 and winning it in 2019. But the MSI 2016 debacle remains one of the most famously self-inflicted embarrassments in league history. A perfect example of what happens when preparation meets procrastination and vacation wins out. At 8, we've got LGD's gaming super team crash in 2015. China entered the 2015 World Championship with massive expectations. After years of falling short, reaching the finals in 2013 and 14, 2015 was supposed to be their year, and leading the charge was LGD Gaming, China's number 1 seed and the absolute super team of the region. This wasn't just a hyped up team. LGD featured Imp, the reigning world champion AD carry from Samsung White. They had Godfrey in mid lane, considered one of the best players in his position, and their roster had dominated domestically, sweeping Edward Gaming to claim the playoffs in their region. Many analysts had LGD as the tournament favourite, some even had them reaching the finals. On paper they had everything they needed, the mechanical skill, the championship experience, and the domestic dominance. Everything was set up for them, and then week 1 of the group stage arrived, and LGD went 0-3. They lost to everyone: Origin, KT Rolster, and even the underdog, TSM. These games weren't particularly close either. LGD looked disjointed, confused, and completely unlike the team which had been absolutely dominating the LPL just weeks earlier. LGD did manage to salvage some pride in week 2, picking up wins over TSM and Origin to finish 2-4, but it wasn't enough. They finished 3rd in their group and failed to advance to the bracket stage. For a team that was supposed to be winning this whole championship, this was not what was expected of them. The embarrassment though was compounded by the context here. This was China's moment, and LGD was very much their best shot. Instead, their number 1 seed became the number 1 laughingstock of the tournament. The team admitted later to issues with internal synergy and maybe a bit of overconfidence following their domestic success. For Imp, who had just a year earlier lifted the Summoners Cup with Samsung White, not even escaping groups was humiliating beyond words for him. Chinese fans were both devastated and furious with LGD. In fact, LGD's Chinese nickname translates to something like optimistic family, but instead people started to use the phrase happy gaming instead sarcastically whenever they were losing. LGD's collapse alongside other Chinese teams faltering that year became known as the LPL's 2015 curse, and it was one of the darkest hours for this region. The lesson, I suppose, is that assembling winning teams is one thing, actually winning is something else entirely. At number 7, we've got Albus Noxaluna's Wildcard 2016 Worlds performance. So Albus Noxaluna weren't really supposed to be at Worlds 2016. They were a wildcard team from the Commonwealth of Independent States region, which includes Russia, and they entered Worlds 2016 as massive underdogs. Wildcard teams historically had got absolutely demolished at international events. They were lucky to even win a single game. They were pretty much cannon fodder for the top teams to chew on whilst they advanced, and just something to fill out the rosters. Then Group A happened and Albus Noxaluna shocked the world. They finished the group stage with a 4-2 record, tied for first place with Korea's ROX Tigers, who were considered by many to be the best team in the tournament. The most memorable moment came in Luna's incredible win over the ROX Tigers. They were down in the late game after ROX had secured multiple Baron steals, but they refused to roll over. They regrouped after every setback and ended up out-macroing the Korean giants, and they won an absolutely insane game that nobody predicted them to win. This forced a rematch tiebreaker between Albus Noxaluna and ROX, which ROX Tigers would go on to win, but Albus Noxaluna had already made history. They secured a quarter-final spot, becoming the first wildcard team to ever make top 8.
All these minions are hitting the void link still. The next
Liquid, go! He's
greatest time!
He's getting it!
They did it!
Oh my god, they did it!
For the major regions in Group A, Albus Noxaluna's success was deeply embarrassing for them. North America's CLG would lose to ANX, but the biggest humiliation belonged to Europe's G2 Esports. Fresh off their MSI vacation disaster, G2 went 1-5 in this group and were eliminated, and of course they dropped games against ANX. This simply had never happened before on this level, with a wildcard team doing so well. For ROX Tigers specifically, the loss to ANX was a wake-up call, and it was noted that they played disrespectful League of Legends in their loss. Overextensions, poor early game, lack of map awareness, and just messing about and not taking things as seriously as they should have. And even though Albus Noxaluna were eventually eliminated in quarterfinals by H2K, their run forced major teams to pay attention to emerging regions.
And all I want to say is that, hey guys, we are from Wildcard. And they have told you before, being underdog doesn't mean being a loser. That's all.
It was an embarrassment to the traditional powerhouse teams to underestimate them anymore, and the phrase wildcard wonder would be forever associated with Albus Noxaluna's magical 2016 run. At number 6, we've got Cloud9's 3-0 sweep over the Africa Freaks at 2018 Worlds. So let's set the scene here. It's the 2018 World Championship quarterfinals. Cloud9, North America's 3rd seed who barely scraped through play-ins, faces Africa Freaks, Korea's 2nd seed. This matchup was not really supposed to be particularly competitive. The LCK by this point in time had been the dominant region in League for years. Korean teams were expected to just simply move through these games no problem. On top of that, no North American team had ever defeated a Korean team in a best-of-5 at Worlds. It was an unbreakable curse, a fundamental truth of competitive League, and Cloud9 won 3-0. And it wasn't really close either. Across the 3 games, C9's aggressive plays and clever drafts completely outmatched the Africa Freaks. This series was dominant from start to finish. Africa looked lost, confused, and just outclassed in this match. C9 would advance onto the semi-finals, making North American history. For the Africa Freaks and the LCK region, this was a crushing defeat. During the aftermath, their drafts were heavily criticized, with them often putting top laners on passive farming champions instead of trying to take the game in their hands and to win out early. Analysts noted this made C9 the first North American team to knock out a Korean team in a best-of-5 at Worlds, a watershed moment that just underscored how far Korea had fallen during this year. Western fans, of course, were equally delighted and surprised at this result. This result, combined with other upsets that happened this year, which we will get onto later, spawned the phrase "the gap is closing," implying the skill gap gap between regions was finally getting narrower. Travis Gafford even tweeted after C9's win, "The gap didn't close, it inverted." Korean fans were of course devastated and equally bewildered by their team's struggles throughout the tournament. Memes towards Afrika afterwards included the Afrika free CS joke, but at least for once it was North America handing out the international humiliation instead of being the joke, and this time the LCK had to bear the brunt of it. At number 5 we have RNG's shocking defeat to G2, again at Worlds 2018. Royal Never Give Up came into the 2018 World Championship as the most hyped up team on the planet. They had won almost everything that year: LPL Spring, MSI 2018, LPL Summer, and Asian Games Gold. They were absolute favourites to finally secure a World Championship for their superstar AD carry Uzi, who is widely considered the best player to never win Worlds. This was supposed to be his year. RNG had the talent, the momentum, the experience, everything pointed towards a championship run. G2 Esports, on the other hand, was Europe's third seed, a dark horse that had to fight through the play-in stage just to reach the main event. And when they finally met RNG in the quarterfinals, everyone expected RNG to just steamroll through. This series was supposed to be a formality on their route towards the cup. Instead, this series went to 5 games and G2 pulled off a jaw-dropping upset. G2 took game 1 with scrappy teamfights and superior late game calls. They secured game 2 as well, but RNG struck back in game 3, reminding everyone why they were the favourites. And in the decisive 5th game, G2's mid and jungle duo Perks and Yankos stepped up massively, with RNG's vaunted team fighting, usually their greatest strength, collapsing completely. This loss was devastating for RNG and their huge fan base. They weren't just favourites, many believe they were destined to win this tournament. Losing to a lower ranked Western team was just absolutely unbelievable. Chinese media and fans would criticise RNG for being too arrogant and not respecting G2 enough. G2's analysts even said later that RNG clearly expected to just come in and steamroll, and their overconfidence proved fatal. For Uzi specifically, this was heartbreaking. After dominating all year and carrying his team to trophy after trophy, he once again fell short on the one prize he had never claimed, and to lose to a team which regionally wasn't doing that well made it even worse.
We had nothing to lose, and they had everything to lose, like rating MSI champions, 2 times LPL champions, Asian Games champions, Rift Albus champions, and there's just some European third seed team coming to get you.
G2's win over RNG here has to be one of the biggest upset best of 5s in world history. A reminder that no favourite is safe and that overconfidence can topple even the mightiest of teams. At number 4 we have Invictus Gaming's win over SKT, and the fastest game ever at MSI taking place in 2019. So in a clash of champions at MSI 2019, Invictus Gaming, the reigning world champions from China, faced SK Telecom T1, the legendary 3-time world champions from Korea. This was an absolute heavyweight fight, a clash of titans that everyone needed to tune in and watch because it was sure to be a great game, right? And then IG delivered a historic beatdown. They defeated SKT in 16 minutes and 1 second. This was the fastest major international game ever. Let me just repeat that. SKT Telecom T1 lost the fastest game ever in just about 16 minutes. IG came out swinging from level 1, opting to a full brawl in the river. The skirmish resulted in the fastest first blood in MSI history too, at just 39 seconds. For this game, SKT had picked a somewhat experimental off-meta Sona Taric bot lane, which aimed to essentially live through the laning game and then provide incredible support to their carry mid and top later on in the game. But IG's aggressive composition was not having any of that, and their Draven and Camille got way too fed for this ever to work. IG's jungler Ning repeatedly ganked mid, killing Faker's Rise multiple times, and SKT couldn't contest anything. Their composition was just never allowed to get out of laning phase. By 13 minutes, IG had broken into SKT's base, destroying an inhibitor, and by 16 minutes it was all over.
World record! They smashed smash SKT, and IG are 4-0.
The final kill score was 13-5 in favour of IG. It was an absolute shellacking, as they say, the kind of game you'd expect when a top 5 team faces a wild card, not world champion material going against one another. The fact that IG made the greatest team in League of Legends history look like they were solo queue players was stunning. To lose a game in 60 minutes is simply a speed run, there's nothing else you can say about it. Stats were tweeted out about this amazing tournament result as well. Chinese fans were ecstatic, of course, heralding it as proof the LPL was now in a much more dominant place, and Korean fans couldn't believe what they just watched. In interviews after, Faker admitted the game was a disaster, and all in all the match lives on in infamy for SKT, an ever-present reminder that even the best of the best can have bad days too. And number 3, we have Team Liquid's upset over Invictus Gaming at MSI 2019. In another MSI 2019 shocker, this time in the semi-finals, Team Liquid, North America's champion, faced Invictus Gaming, the defending world champions. IG, of course, as you would expect, were heavy favourites. They had just destroyed SKT in 60 minutes earlier in the tournament. That has to be pretty scary to go against. They had a record of 9-1 in the group stage, and they boasted star players like Rookie and the Shy. TL, by contrast, barely scraped out of groups as the 4th seed. Against all odds, however, Team Liquid won the series 3-1. TL started hot, taking game 1 through team fighting and superior late game decision making. Riding the momentum, they surprisingly scored game 2 as well.
The last auto attack from Jensen is going to be enough. Ladies and gentlemen, Team Liquid are on to the Nexus. The Shy is stunned up, the Shy is brought down, and Team Liquid will take us to match point.
But IG struck back in Game 3 with a fast, aggressive strategy, reminding everyone why they were world champions. But Team Liquid closed it out convincingly in Game 4, even pulling out creative picks to counter IG's strategies. Throughout the series, TL's veteran core, Doublelift, Xmithy, and Impact outplayed IG's notoriously aggressive style. IG, known sometimes for underestimating their opponents, made overzealous plays and questionable drafts that TL expertly punished. And in the decisive Game 4, TL jumped to an early lead and never let go of it, dismantling the world champions.
Gonna survive, Impact is here! Xmithy's gonna get the stun! Rookie in some trouble, he tries to stay alive, he's almost able to outplay Xmithy, but not quite yet! The damage isn't there!
This was heralded as one of the biggest upsets ever in League of Legends history. For IG, losing to a North American team was a harsh blow to their pride. Up to this point, North America had never beaten a Chinese team of this caliber in a best of 5. IG's players admitted later they weren't at their best and didn't adapt to the meta quickly enough. The Shy's overextensions and Rocky getting caught in crucial moments just looked very out of character for them. IG's coach and players publicly conceded that on the day, TL was simply the better team. Many also cited overconfidence as a problem. IG might have been looking past TL towards the finals, and it ended up costing them dearly. And for a team as stacked as Invictus Gaming were, failing to reach the finals by losing to a perceived underdog was extremely embarrassing for them.
I don't know, easy clap?
Exactly.
And number 2, we have TSM 06 Worlds Wipeout in 2020. Team Solo Mid are without a doubt one of North America's most storied organizations. They were the LCS Summer 2020 champions, and they featured legendary players such as Bjergsen and Doublelift. They entered Worlds 2020 as North America's #1 seed, with hopes of reaching the knockout stage for the first time since 2014. Instead, they didn't win a single game. TSM finished with a 0-6 record, becoming the first #1 seed from a major region ever to go winless at Worlds. Not a single win, 6 losses in a row. It was historically and monumentally bad. They were drawn into Group C with Fnatic, Gen.G, and LGD. Now, this is not a particularly easy group, but they were North America's #1 seed and were at least expected to be competitive versus Fnatic. In Week 1, TSM started 0-3. Fnatic handed them their first loss, and then Gen.G crushed them in 27 minutes with nearly an 11,000 gold lead. Things got worse on day 3 when TSM also lost to LGD, Cloud9 as 4th seed. They needed to win every game in week 2 to realistically have a chance at quarterfinals, but Fnatic immediately killed that dream with another loss, and TSM was officially eliminated with 2 games still left to play. So whilst these final 2 matches really didn't mean anything for TSM, they could at least save some face and prove that they were just having a bad tournament so far, and they didn't. They lost both of them. The 0-6 was complete. TSM's performance showcased glaring issues from top to bottom. Their drafts were confusing and failed to adapt. Star mid laner Bjergsen, who was usually TSM's rock, was middle of the pack, getting solo killed, missing skill shots, and not looking like his dominant self. And Double's form was poor compared to what he had been doing domestically. The only bright spot for TSM was rookie jungler Speaker, but he couldn't carry the sinking ship. Perhaps the defining moment was the 9-man sleep. It was a brilliant engage on every single member against LGD, however the rest of TSM were also asleep and completely failed to follow up on this engage.
Gets hooked in, Stoneplate will time out. Can TSM find the first kill? Speaker's gonna get in! That is a 5-man sleep! If TSM can't win this, what will they? 1 for 0, the burn on Rascal just not enough.
This could have been the moment where they turned things around and started to put some wins on the board, and it just slipped them by. The community reaction was brutal, although understandable. TSM absolutely had one of the largest fan bases, which meant legions of disappointed fans. To this day, people still ask in Twitch chat when TSM are playing during major tournaments. This 0-6 run became an inescapable part of TSM's legacy, an achievement that nobody really wants to unlock, but one that they will always have to remember. And the number 1 spot is KaBuM's Miracle over Alliance, the original World Shock from 2014. So this is going all the way back to World Championship in 2014 Group D. Alliance were Europe's number 1 seed, and they'd just beaten Korean powerhouse Najim White Shield and North America's Cloud9 on the same day. They looked unstoppable. All they needed to do to force a tiebreaker for the quarterfinal spot was beat KaBuM, Brazil's wildcard representative, who were 0-5 and already eliminated from the tournament. This was just a formality game for Alliance, surely. They were expected to win. KaBuM had not picked up a single game during this tournament, and Alliance featured legendary mid laner Froggen, who had been dominating the entire year. The Brazilians had nothing to play for except their pride. In a stunning turn of events, KaBuM came out swinging and dominated from start to finish. Mid laner Tinon Zari and AD carry Minerva's Jinx ran rampant through Alliance's lineup, and KaBuM camped Alliance's top laner Wicked repeatedly. Alliance in response though were looking disorganized and fell further and further behind with each passing minute. KaBuM methodically closed out the game in under 39 minutes, and the upset was complete. Alliance were eliminated from Worlds, and North America's Cloud9 advanced instead. There are so many reasons people call this the biggest upset in Worlds history. Alliance were heavily favoured here. Riot's power rankings had them 5th in the entire world, whilst KaBuM were absolute dead last. The idea that a winless Brazilian team from a minor wildcard region could trip up European champions was just impossible. And then it happened. For Alliance and EU fans, this was mortifying. Alliance had all the tools to succeed. They'd just beaten a Korean team. They had momentum, talent, and everything to play for in the tournament. Yet they completely collapsed against a team everyone expected them to crush. KaBuM outplayed them in every aspect. Better picks and bans, laning, objective control, the whole thing. Alliance were just beaten on the day. This result marked the first time a wildcard team had ever beaten a European team at Worlds, and it directly contributed to North America's Cloud9 advancing at Europe's expense. For the EU region at the time, this was a huge blow to their reputation, and the shockwave from this win was felt worldwide. And whenever a big favourite is upset by an underdog, someone is always going to reference it being a KaBuM moment. And this for me is why this is one of the most embarrassing upsets in league history. A team that was ranked last in the tournament, knocking out a European favourite, and allowing a North American team to advance in their place. It really is the perfect storm of what makes competitive leagues so entertaining to watch. And that's everything from from Samsung Ozone's collapse to KaBuM's miracle upset. These moments remind us that in League of Legends esports, nothing is truly guaranteed. The mightiest can fall, the favorites can choke, and sometimes the underdogs are the ones writing the most unforgettable stories. These moments have all left their mark on League of Legends history. They've spawned awards, birthed memes, ended careers, and even humbled champions. They prove that talent alone isn't enough, that preparation matters, and that respecting your opponent is paramount, because if you don't, you may just be the next entry on a list like this. What do you think though? Are there any other moments you would have included here? Drop them down in the comments below. And, as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening in, and I shall see you on the next one very soon.